She woke up to strange noises. She couldn't open her eyes just yet, but was aware of everything that was happening around her. She smelled the thick smell of alcohol around her and almost struggled to breathe it in. The more she tried, the more the smell burnt the sensitive mucosa inside her nostrils. In fact, she struggled to breathe at all. Whenever she took in a breath of air, her chest hurt terribly. Her pelvis and legs also hurt terribly, and she couldn't move them without bolts of pain shattering through her skull. She tried to move her hands, but realized that they were tied down. Iago. All the sound in the room ceased except for that irritating, beeping sound that seemed to be a constant echoing presence around her. Where was she? Back with Rose. The mattress felt harder than Rose's mattress, or Iago's mattress for that matter. She couldn't smell Rose's perfume, so she was sure that she wasn't there. She listened for any familiar sounds, rustle of leaves, footsteps on carpet, Rose in the kitchen singing softly. She heard nothing, except for the beeping. Iago. Tears welled up in her eyes as she remembered what he had done. He had given up his life for her, the ultimate sacrifice, yet she would never see him again. She could feel the tears run backwards towards her hair, so she deduced that she was lying down flat on her back. She had probably been taken captive by the demon, she deduced, and was being prepared for her hanging and burning. Fear wasn't present inside of her. She would be burnt and hung with pride in Iago's memory. Someone said something, a deep blur that she couldn't make out, and forced one eye open and shone a bright light inside. Fear overtook her as it opened the other eye and shone a bright light in that eye as well. So the torture had begun. What else would it do to torture her? She prayed it wouldn't cause her any more pain and stiffened, expecting another jolt to course through her, either from her lungs, face, legs, or any other wounded part of her body. Thankfully, it left her alone, and she bided her time. She would regain her strength and fight the demon if it was the last thing she did. She shivered with cold, and something was placed over her. So the demon had heard some of her words she previously said about compassion. She fought slipping into sleep again and tried to force her eyes open. They wouldn't open, and panic began to soar through her. She calmed as she thought of Iago, his deep, dark, blue-grey eyes, his pale but warm skin, his reddish hair tied behind his head. She pictured him as she had first seen him, standing at her door, arms crossed, dressed in a black suit, with a black cloak, which reached his knees, an amused look on his face, just staring at her, staring at him. She smiled, but a sharp pain came from her lip. Smiling or not, she was calmer, just looking at his face in her memory. It must have been seen by her captor as her restraints were removed from her wrists and her wrists rubbed. Its hands were very soft, but she didn't want it touching her. The only hands that she wanted touching her was Iago's. She moaned softly and tried to pull her hands away. "Don't worry, I'm here. Everything's okay." That voice. That wasn't the voice of the demon. It was still distorted, but she stilled herself and listened again. "There's nothing to be afraid of. Everything's over." Struggling, she turned her head towards the sound of the voice. It didn't sound cruel, and it was definitely not the demon's voice, so she calmed herself. If only she could open her eyes. The person released contact, and she followed the footsteps with her ears. Not many footsteps meant that she was in a room. The lights were dim, so she assumed she was indoors, not in the field anymore, and since it wasn't the demon anymore, she felt confident enough to let the blackness overcome her again. She had no idea for how long she had been out, but her situation stayed the same. Still pain all over her body, still a strong smell of pure alcohol. The restraints were still off. Her eyes didn't feel so heavy anymore, and she tried to open them. They opened slightly, and she felt jubilation echo through her. However, she tried not to smile as her lips stung as she did. She realized she was thirsty and that her tongue stuck to the inside of her mouth. Water. She struggled to formulate the words, but it made the commotion in the room stop, and she could feel someone standing next to her. Please, water, she asked again. "Not right now, Sean, but I'll put some wetness on your lips for you." That voice. She recognized that voice. In disbelief, she forced her eyes open as an ice cube was gently passed between her lips, precious drops of cool water dropping into her mouth. Then she saw him. She saw him. She saw him looking at her, with a navy blue top on his torso, with that perfect posture. It was him. His blue-grey piercing eyes, his pale skin, his amused grin on that beautiful mouth. "Iago?" she asked, heart beating against her chest, formulating the words perfectly this time. Oh goodness. The person laughed in Iago's contagious laugh. The last person to call me Iago was my great-grandfather. "My name's Jim. I'm a nurse here at Arrowcross Hospital. I used to work with you, Sean. You were in a motor vehicle accident 4 days ago, and I've been looking after you ever since. You're a lucky young lady to be alive." She stared at him for some time, hyperventilating, tears welling up in her eyes. Iago had kept his promise. He had found her. She couldn't take her eyes off him as tears streamed down her face. Are you okay? Should I call the doctor?" She grabbed his hand as he turned to go with the firmest grasp that she could fathom. "Please," she said, with tears in her eyes. "Please don't go." He stroked her face gently with warm, soft hands. Iago's hands. "Don't worry, Sean. I won't be going anyway.